What really happened on that fateful day at Little Bighorn has fascinated historians for over a century. But no account is as gripping, as raw, or as revealing as that of W.S. Edgerly. In this exclusive eyewitness testimony, Edgerly exposes the shocking truths behind Custer's last stand, details you won't find in any textbook or documentary. From harrowing moments of chaos to acts of unimaginable courage, this story pulls back the curtain on one of history's most legendary battles. Stay with us as we uncover the untold realities that will change everything you thought you knew about that fatal clash. On June 25, 1876, the expansive Montana plains witnessed one of the most notorious encounters in American history, the Battle of Little Bighorn. As the dust cleared and muskets fell silent, a young lieutenant named Winfield Scott Edgerly stood out among the few survivors of Custer's doomed 7th Cavalry. In this gripping first-hand narrative, Edgerly vividly recalls the intense events of that tragic day, from the opening clashes through the final, desperate defense. With stark honesty and striking detail, Edgerly vividly portrays the confusion, bravery, and sorrow that marked Custer's last stand. Prepare yourself for a unique historical insight as we transport you back to that momentous day in 1876. So, get comfortable, relax, and join us on this intriguing voyage through history. While watching, please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel to support this community. On the morning of June 25, 1876, at about 10 a.m., we were roughly 15 miles from the enemy's camp, with our entire force assembled. We paused as General Custer ascended a nearby hill with several scouts to survey the Indian village, which was clearly visible below. Upon his return, he summoned all the officers for a briefing. He revealed that the Indians had spotted us, and though his scouts had pursued some, those had escaped to warn others. We would therefore need to launch a direct assault on the village. Custer believed the Indians would offer little resistance against his full cavalry regiment and would probably flee at the sight of our advance. He instructed the troop commanders to prepare their men to move immediately, and in under a minute everyone was ready. General Custer and his adjutant, Lieutenant Colonel Cook, split the regiment into 4 battalions, each led by a senior officer, Major Reno, Lieutenant Colonel Benteen, Major Keogh, and Captain Yates. Major Reno was told to proceed straight down the valley to attack the Indian village, with reinforcements to follow. Lieutenant Colonel Benteen was ordered to advance to the left at roughly a 45-degree angle from Reno's path and engage any Indians he encountered. The strategy assumed the Indians would flee either right or left. Captain McDougal, with his troop, was assigned to protect the rear guard and manage the pack train. The exact instructions given to Major Keogh and Captain Yates were unknown to me, but Custer proceeded with them, leading 5 companies totaling around 250 to 300 men, moving parallel to Reno's line. The last time I saw General Custer alive, he was headed in that direction. Lieutenant Colonel Benteen followed orders, but soon encountered a series of tall hills. He sent Lieutenant Gibson to the hilltops to scout for Indians. Lieutenant Gibson repeatedly reported no signs of the enemy, after which Benteen veered right. About 5 or 6 miles from our start, we found Major Reno's trail and pursued it quickly. While following the trail, a trumpeter from General Custer's staff delivered a note to Lieutenant Colonel Benteen, "Come on, big village, be quick, bring packs." Signed, Lieutenant Colonel Cook, Adjutant. We pressed forward and 3 miles from the village witnessed fighting in the valley below. Over 100 men rushed toward the bluffs across the Little Bighorn River where the village lay. They crossed the river and disappeared into the hills. We stood on the opposite shore, some distance away. The orderly who brought us the message claimed Custer's men had surprised the village and were winning, so I assumed the fleeing men were Indians evading our troops. We hurried to the ford crossed by Reno's men to support them, but a Crow scout named Half Yellowface signaled for us to move up a hill on our right. We altered course and climbed the hill. At the summit, we found Lieutenant Colonel Reno and his men attending several wounded soldiers thirsting for water. To our shock, they had been driven from their position. Some Indians remained nearby, concealed behind rocks and hills, shooting at us. We quickly formed a skirmish line and pushed them back. Then heavy gunfire erupted from the area where General Custer's unit's remains would later be discovered. Clouds of dust and riders on horseback moved back and forth on the river's far side, roughly 4 miles from us. During this, Captain Weir, my commander, asked for my opinion. I recommended we attempt to aid General Custer. He agreed, and our first sergeant echoed this. The captain then inquired if I would lead D Troop to reinforce Custer if he secured permission. I consented to accompany him. He rode to consult Lieutenant Colonel Reno and Lieutenant Colonel Benteen, then returned, mounted his horse, and took an orderly with him. They departed toward the earlier gunfire, which had mostly ceased. I believed he had permission, but learned later he had not requested it. I mounted the troop and followed. After a few hundred yards, I turned right into a small valley, likely the path Custer's men took. We advanced toward the main Indian force visible in the distance. As we proceeded down the valley, Colonel Weir, positioned on a bluff to our left, spotted a large group of Indians approaching. He signaled me to bring the troop back to his position, and I complied. On reaching the bluff, I saw Lieutenant Colonel Benteen, Captain French, and Lieutenant Godfrey approaching with their men. We relocated along the bluff until the Indians opened fire. We dismounted and formed a line on the ridge, exchanging fire for about 30 minutes. Then, following General Reno's command, we withdrew to our prior position. We lost 1 soldier and 1 horse during the retreat. The Indians quickly pursued, firing Winchesters at us. Once reunited with Reno's men, we saw other units arranged along the hill crest. Weir's and Godfrey's troops joined us, extending our line. Soon the Indians launched a fierce assault, firing heavily though most bullets passed overhead. The battle continued for over an hour until dusk, ending the day's fighting. Before dawn the next morning, the Indians resumed firing from a distance, continuing until about 10 a.m. After that, little shooting occurred, though small Indian groups could be seen on surrounding ridges. That afternoon, the Indians dismantled their teepees across the river and departed around 4 p.m. From our vantage point the previous afternoon, we had sustained few casualties and remained in position, moving to a nearby location that night. The following morning, Lieutenant Bradley, leader of General Terry's scouts, arrived to inform us that General Custer and all his men had been killed. Shortly after, General Terry arrived with his column and assigned our regiment to bury the dead. The first soldiers discovered were Lieutenants Calhoun and Crittenden, along with enlisted men of L Troop. Their officers' bodies lay behind them in a neat skirmish line where they fell. Crittenden was pierced with many arrows. Continuing, we found Colonel Keogh and his troop, apparently retreating toward the hill where General Custer's body was located, engaged in combat on the way. The other soldiers' remains scattered across the terrain, with many concentrated near the hill where Custer fell. On that hill lay the bodies of General Custer, his adjutant Lieutenant Colonel Cook, Colonel Tom Custer, numerous enlisted men, and horses. At the hill's base were Lieutenant Riley, Captain Yates, many enlisted men, and horses. General Custer's brother Boston and his nephew Reed lay about 100 yards from him. Only Colonel Tom Custer and Lieutenant Colonel Cook bore evidence of mutilation. All bodies had been stripped of their uniforms. Most soldiers were naked, though a few wore undershirts, socks, and drawers. The bodies lay east of the river, below the main village, roughly 4 miles from Reno's position. When I rode out with the troop the afternoon of June 25th, I saw many Indians moving across the battlefield, galloping back and forth and firing at items on the ground, though we couldn't discern the targets. Later, At the summit where Reno's men gathered, I heard intense firing lasting about 15 to 20 minutes. Then it abruptly ceased. After burying General Custer and his men on the river's east side, we crossed to the west bank to inter the dead from Reno's command, approximately 40 soldiers. We also discovered 2 Indian teepees containing the bodies of warriors, finely dressed and fastened to poles. Chief Low Dog explained this as an honorable way to dispose of brave warriors, leaving their bodies for the enemy. I had never witnessed this before and believed they were left because the Indians fled hastily, alarmed by General Terry's advancing forces. Around the teepees, dead ponies equal the number of warriors, arranged in a circle with heads pointed toward the teepees. From what I observed, I estimated around 7,000 warriors engaged. By comparison, General Terry's column numbered about 500 and looked small beside them. The Indians told us General Custer's route followed the east bank of the river, only about 15 to 20 yards wide at that spot. Meanwhile, Reno's men crossed the river from the west and launched their attack. The riverbank was too steep to access until about 3 miles from Reno's location, where Custer found a ford and probably attempted to cross but was repelled and forced back to where he was found. Dead bodies lay along the entire ford-to-hill path where Custer fell. Notably, Custer had cut his long hair short before battle. His body was naked but not mutilated. But even now, over a century later, many questions linger on those silent Montana hills. What secret drove the fateful decisions that day? Blunders, bravery, or simply fate? Was there more to be learned from Edgerly's account than history dares to admit? The truth behind Custer's last stand might never be fully uncovered. But one thing is certain: the echoes of those desperate moments still ripple through time, challenging everything we think we know. So what's your theory? Did Custer's fate rest on his own choices, or was it sealed by forces beyond his control? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were on those bluffs in 1876, what would you have done? Join the discussion, because your voice might just help rewrite the legacy of this legendary battle. Don't forget to subscribe and share your theories. Who knows what astonishing revelations we'll uncover together next time.